Disclaimer: this content is intended for a mature audience only. Viewer discretion is advised. The room was still when I woke, the silence broken only by the faint rhythm of his breathing beside me. Morning light filtered through the curtains, painting everything in a soft golden glow, like the world itself was holding its breath. My body stirred before my mind could, and I knew something had shifted in the night. My hand brushed against the sheets, and I felt it, the warmth, the dampness, and the memory it carried. My heart quickened, not out of fear, but out of something unspoken, something only he and I shared. I turned my head slowly, watching him, my husband, the man I had built my life around, the one whose presence was both anchor and storm. His face looked peaceful, almost boyish in that moment, but I could see the faintest trace of last night still lingering in the way his lips curved, as if even in sleep he remembered. I swallowed, a mix of tenderness and unease rising in me. Because I knew, and he knew too. There's a certain honesty that exists only between two people bound by love, by years of whispered promises and unspoken truths. It doesn't always need words, sometimes it's found in the quiet gestures, in the way two bodies find each other in the dark without hesitation. Last night, he had reached for me with a hunger I felt deep in my bones, a hunger that said more than he ever could with language. And now, the dawn revealed the traces of it, etched into my skin, stitched into my breath. But this morning, it wasn't only about desire. It was about the silence that lingered, the weight of his knowing glance when his eyes finally opened and met mine. Would he smile, or would he hold back? Would he speak, or let the moment hover like a secret only we shared? I wasn't sure which I wanted more, his confession, or his restraint. My chest tightened as I felt the air shift, his body stirring beside me, his lashes fluttering open. Those eyes, dark, steady, searching, fell upon me, and in that gaze I felt both exposed and held. He knew why I woke this way. He knew, and yet he waited, as if giving me the choice to say it first, to unravel the silence between us. And in that pause, in that breath suspended between us, I realized the morning was no ordinary one. It was the beginning of a truth that could change how I saw him, and how I saw myself. His eyes stayed on me, unblinking, as though he was reading the words I hadn't dared to say aloud. The morning quiet pressed around us, the kind of silence that felt alive, filled with everything we remembered but hadn't yet spoken. I shifted slightly beneath the sheets, feeling the weight of his gaze like a question waiting for its answer. My throat tightened, because I knew if I opened my mouth, the truth would spill out, fragile and unguarded. This was the man who had been with me through storms and still waters, the man who once held my hand when I was afraid of the future, whispering that we would build it together. And yet, in moments like this, he felt new again, unfamiliar in the way his desire carried a quiet force, making me realize that even after years of knowing, there are still parts of him I haven't touched, emotions I haven't fully understood. That thought both scared and thrilled me. He moved closer, just enough that his shoulder brushed mine. It was such a small gesture, yet my heart quickened. I felt the warmth radiating from him, a reminder of last night's closeness and the honesty that lived in our bodies when words failed us. His breathing grew steady, deliberate, as though he wanted me to hear it, to feel it, to know that this silence wasn't emptiness but choice. Memories of our early days together flickered in my mind, the nervous laughter, the hesitant touches, the way we used to write letters to each other because sometimes the weight of spoken words was too much to bear. That tenderness had never left us, not truly. It simply took different shapes over time. Now, it lingered in mornings like this, when neither of us rushed, when we let the air between us decide how much of our hearts we were ready to show. His hand shifted, resting lightly over mine on the sheets. He didn't grip, didn't press, just rested there, like a promise he wasn't ready to speak aloud. I turned to meet his eyes, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was no past, no future, only this fragile present, held together by breath and longing. Something unspoken trembled in the air. I could feel it waiting, his truth, my fear, our shared desire, hovering just beyond reach. And in that moment, I realized the hardest part wasn't what had happened last night, but what would be revealed if we finally let the silence break. The silence lingered, heavy yet fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong word. I felt his hand resting over mine, steady, but beneath that steadiness I sensed something, hesitation, maybe even fear. My husband was not a man easily shaken. He had always been the pillar of calm in my storms. And yet this morning, I could feel the storm was his. My thoughts wandered back to a different night, years ago, when we were still learning the language of each other's hearts. He had confessed then that he often carried a restlessness he couldn't explain, a need to hold on tighter, to feel closer, because sometimes he feared losing what he loved most. I didn't understand it fully at the time, but I held him anyway, whispering that I wasn't going anywhere. That memory now pressed against me, reminding me that last night's intensity was not only desire, it was him reaching out from a place deeper than want. I wondered if he remembered that confession as clearly as I did. Perhaps what he gave me in the dark was not just hunger, but a plea, to see him, to choose him again, even after years of shared days and silent routines. My chest ached with the weight of that possibility. He stirred beside me, his fingers curling ever so slightly against mine, and I saw it in his eyes when I looked up, the flicker of vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. It wasn't lust that lingered there, it was something tender, raw, unguarded. He wanted me to know him fully, even the parts of himself that he didn't always understand. But a voice inside me whispered questions I wasn't ready to face. Could love hold both the comfort of years and the burning edge of desire without breaking? Could I carry his needs without losing pieces of my own? I wanted to believe the answer was yes, but the uncertainty tied itself around my breath. The morning air thickened as if the walls themselves held our secrets. His gaze never left me, patient but heavy with meaning, waiting for me to step closer or pull away. And in that waiting, in the unspoken plea that hung between us, I realized the conflict was no longer about last night, it was about whether we dared to confront what lay beneath it. The air between us thickened, pulsing with all the words unsaid. His hand was still over mine, but now I felt the faint tremor in his touch, a softness that betrayed his calm exterior. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't only about last night anymore. This was about everything that had been left unsaid in the quiet corners of our marriage, everything we had buried beneath routines and responsibilities. I wanted to speak, to ask him what he was holding inside, but the words tangled. What if naming it broke the fragile balance we lived in? What if his truth frightened me, or worse, revealed a need I couldn't meet? Yet at the same time, I longed to close the space, to press my forehead against his and let him know I still felt the fire, that I still saw him. My heart hammered with the paradox, desire to lean in, fear to fall. His eyes didn't waver. They searched mine as though he was waiting for a door to open, a signal that I was ready to let him in. And in that gaze, I felt naked, not because of the night we shared, but because he was looking past my body, into the quiet ache of my soul. It was unbearable and magnetic all at once. My chest rose sharply, and I whispered his name, almost involuntarily. Just one word, fragile yet heavy with all the weight of what I couldn't say. His breath shifted, quickened, and for the first time that morning I saw the edge of desperation in his expression. He wanted me to understand him, perhaps more than he wanted me to forgive or to desire him. A memory flashed, our wedding night, when we stood before each other trembling not from fear but from the immensity of what we were promising. That same tremble echoed now, years later, reminding me that even love grown familiar still carried risks. To be seen fully was as terrifying as it was beautiful. I felt the pull between us stretch tighter, like a thread straining, ready to snap or weave us closer than ever before. My lips parted, ready to finally step into the truth, when he shifted, leaning just close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence itself was the question, and my heart was thundering with the answer I hadn't yet dared to give. The moment teetered on the edge of breaking, his breath warm against my skin, my heart thrumming with answers I hadn't yet spoken, when a shift in his expression caught me off guard. His gaze faltered, just for an instant, as though something heavy pressed behind his eyes. It wasn't just longing anymore. It was fear. He drew back a fraction, enough for me to feel the absence, and in that space I saw him struggle. It was as if he was holding something back, something larger than either of us had admitted. My chest tightened, dread weaving with desire. What was he hiding? Why did his silence feel heavier than any confession? I remembered a night months ago when I woke to find him sitting at the edge of our bed, his shoulders bent beneath a weight I couldn't name. He had brushed it off when I asked, said it was nothing, just work, just the world. But the shadow of that moment now returned, threading itself through the air between us. My hand trembled beneath his, and I realized the conflict was no longer about what had happened last night, but about what lay beneath it, his need, his ache, his unspoken truth. I felt both drawn and terrified. What if his hunger wasn't just for closeness, but for reassurance that I wasn't slipping away from him? What if, beneath his tenderness, there lived a fear of losing me? He finally spoke, his voice low, almost breaking. Do you ever wonder if we're still enough for each other? The words shattered the silence. My breath caught, my body frozen. It wasn't accusation, it was plea. Vulnerable, raw, aching. And yet it struck me like thunder. I wanted to answer, but my own doubts stirred. Had I not wondered the same, in quiet moments when I questioned whether love could hold both the comfort of years and the spark of beginnings? My throat ached with the confession I wasn't ready to make. The morning light pressed in, painting us in gold and shadow, as though even the sun knew we stood at the edge of something fragile and irreversible. His hand tightened over mine, not forceful, but desperate. And I knew, this was no longer just about last night. This was about the unspoken fears that could either break us apart or bind us closer than ever. The words hung between us, fragile and trembling. Do you ever wonder if we're still enough? My chest tightened as though the air itself had turned heavy. I had spent so long avoiding that question, tucking it away in the quiet corners of routine, smiling through the days and convincing myself that love was safest left unspoken. But now, staring into his eyes, I could no longer hide. Yes, I whispered, my voice breaking on the single syllable. His hand stiffened against mine, as though bracing for a wound. But before fear could take root, I continued. Yes. I've wondered. I've feared. And last night, I realized how much it matters to me too, that you still reach for me, that you still want me as I am. His eyes softened, filling with something raw, relief, pain, tenderness all woven together. He leaned closer, his forehead brushing mine, and I felt the tremor in his breath. I wasn't just hungry, he said quietly. I was afraid. Afraid you might slip away without me noticing. Afraid I'd wake up one day and find the distance too wide to cross. Tears gathered in my eyes, blurring his face, but I didn't look away. You haven't lost me, I murmured, the words spilling from a place deeper than fear. But I think. I was waiting for you to remind me, waiting for us to remember what we built wasn't just comfort. It was fire too. For the first time that morning, his shoulders seemed to release a weight. He pressed his lips gently against my temple, not claiming, not demanding, just resting there like a vow. My heart broke and healed in the same moment, realizing that the love we feared was fading was not gone at all, it was only hidden, waiting for the courage of honesty. And yet, as I exhaled, letting the truth settle between us, I felt the twist, an awareness I hadn't spoken aloud. It wasn't only his fear. It was mine too. That unspoken truth lay quietly between us, reminding me that love was not a certainty to be stored away, but a choice renewed in each fragile dawn. We lay there in the golden light, no longer silent, no longer pretending. And in that moment, I knew, we were still enough, because we had chosen to be. The morning stretched itself slowly across the room, spilling light over tangled sheets and quiet hearts. We had spoken the words that for so long lived in shadows, and though they trembled from our lips, they carried truth strong enough to steady us. I felt the weight of his hand still clasping mine, not tight, not desperate, simply present. And in that simple presence, I felt everything shift. He turned his head to look at me, his expression softer than dawn itself. No more hiding, no more silent questions. Just a man who had dared to reveal his fear, and a woman who finally admitted her own. In that raw honesty, we rediscovered the pulse that had always been there, waiting beneath the noise of daily life. We lay in stillness, remembering. The early days when love was clumsy but eager, the nights when laughter spilled louder than words, the times when silence had felt like distance instead of comfort. Each memory returned, not to haunt us, but to remind us of the journey we had taken. Love, I realized, was not about being unbreakable, it was about choosing to mend, again and again. His thumb brushed against the back of my hand, a gesture so small yet filled with promise. "We're still here," he whispered, almost as if to himself. And I knew that was enough. We didn't need grand declarations, only the willingness to see each other fully, even in the moments when fear disguised itself as desire. Outside, the day was beginning, the world asking us to rise. But for a while longer, we remained where we were, wrapped not in perfection, but in something far more real. The night before had not broken us. It had reminded us that love is fragile, yes, but also resilient when we dare to touch the truth. As the light grew stronger, I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. It was a sound I had known for years, yet somehow it felt new again. And I thought to myself, sometimes, the most powerful way to love is simply to choose it, again, in the quiet of the morning. And that choice, made in silence, in trembling, in truth, is what keeps love alive.